الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وبعد. Who's authorized and trusted to write about the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Let's discuss it. At least should have knowledge to go to the resources that talk about the life of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who knows how to verify the truth from falsehood. So he has a scholarship in that they make research, scholars, and go to so many stories you find in books about the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Take the story that has been established with an authentic chain of narration and collect whatever they want to collect about the life of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are the ones qualified to write about anything. When I used to study chemistry in Texas in the early 80s, chemical engineering department, the people who gave us lectures, they actually have PhDs, masters at least, in, for example, organic chemistry. The book was this thick. They have knowledge in it, so they hired them at the university to teach. Why don't we treat the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in even a better way? Who's qualified to talk about Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and about his seerah, his life, his actions, his works? People who have knowledge, right? This is only basic, isn't it? That's what we should be looking for when we want to advise others to read a book about the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Somebody who would look at stories that have been collected in various books of seerah in Arabic that are not established or fake. You know, scholars before, when they want to talk about a topic, they're collected, like the seerah, for example, the good and the bad, just to say that there is this story. But that doesn't mean it's authentic. We verify, according to the scholars of hadith, which is which. Is it authentic or rejected? So if I want to advise somebody to read a book about the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I would advise them of a book that is written by somebody who has knowledge, who made research and collected authentic ahadith, and I do mean in English here, we're talking about English, a book in English, because the books in Arabic, mashallah, there's so many. Somebody who has knowledge, a scholar, who knows how to verify a hadith and distinguish between right and wrong. Also, there is a third aspect, which is to be eloquent. Because eloquent means, you can make the subject attractive. But eloquent here doesn't mean to be using sophisticated language that scholars of literature, divide among each other, when the common people can't understand what the topic is about, or many of the words, like these huge words that people collect today to talk about our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Recently, I heard and I saw a video by someone, no need to mention his name, advising people to read a book by a person. This guy died years ago. His name is Martin Lings. He wrote a book about the life of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm looking at the cover. It says Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his life based on the earliest sources by Martin Lings, Abu Bakr Siraj ad-Din. This man became Muslim and chose the Sufi kind of Islam الطريقة الشاذلية early on, and wrote books about Sufism. What is Sufism? This is one of his books. Yeah, what is Sufism? What is Sufism? Subhanallah. So this guy is advising people to read it because this guy is a Shakespeare alim. Let me put it in other words. He said he's a alim. When his audience laughed, he said alim means scholar. He's a scholar in Shakespeare. Shakespeare, he died in the early 17th century, 1616, I think. So this is about 500 years ago. 400 years ago, 420, 410, 404, count it. I'm not in the mood of counting anything now because I'm going to talk about this topic. This is really ridiculous. So he says, I advise you to read this book, which is written by a hardcore Sufi from Ashadili Tariqa, who wrote about the life of our Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Okay, there were scholars before who were scholars, but they leaned, to Sufism, to Ash'ari. There are benefits that we can gain from their books, not because they were eloquent, but because they had knowledge in those topics. And, when we're careful to avoid what's wrong, inshallah, we'll benefit from what's right. As Imam Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah said about some books, take the good, leave the evil, or the wrong part. Yeah, this is a very good advice from a scholar. But here's the topic. So this man says, read this book. It's very eloquent. This man is Shakespeare eloquent. He's a alim, a scholar in Shakespeare. Even though this book has major issues, because he is not a scholar. Decipher this. So he's a alim who's not a alim, a scholar who's not a scholar. Why would I read for him? Just because he's Shakespeare's English is superb? Well, I studied Shakespeare when I was young. All his books, almost all his books, I studied. Who speaks Shakespearean English today? Do people in England, if you go there, they don't speak Shakespeare. And I can guarantee you, if you give them most of the common people their books of Shakespeare, there's many things they wouldn't understand what this guy is talking about. Or why is he speaking like this, talking like this? Because this is 400 years ago. It's not another generation, it's 400 years ago. People in England don't speak Shakespeare. Definitely not in Ireland or Scotland. They don't speak Shakespeare here in America, or in Canada, or in Australia, or New Zealand. Definitely not in the Indian subcontinent. They don't speak Shakespeare English. And the Arabs, I'm Arab, they don't speak Shakespearean English. It's just literature, just stories from an era that is very, very old for us, 400 years ago. Nobody speaks his language. So, because he is considered by some to be the most eloquent English speaker, okay, what does that mean? You have the entire world today, they don't speak the language he spoke. And they can't read easily what he wrote. Just because we have his plays now being played all over, it doesn't mean anything, And in fact, like I did when I was required to read Shakespeare's stories and stuff, these books. Why is this guy talking like this? It's strange to me, but during that time, this is the way they spoke. We're a different era, 400 years later. So what I'm saying here, if you want to advise somebody to read a book about the Seerah, being eloquent is just one part. And let me talk about an ayah and end with the ayah. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. Every messenger, Rasul, we sent him with the language of his people. Why? لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ, to give them the bayan. What's the bayan? Explanation. To explain clearly to them what's going on. What's going on with the religion, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to do, how they can worship Allah, why they should worship Allah, what they should expect if worship Allah, and if they choose not to worship Allah, about this life, the day of judgment, about Jannah and Jahannam, about the past, the present, and the future. The messengers came with all this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their message was required to be fit and understandable by the common people and the most eloquent of their people. You see, what is the most eloquent book in existence? Allah's book. His kalam for sure. He spoke with the Quran. These are his words, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The most eloquent book. What did Allah say in it? And it is practiced and it is known and understandable from practice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. We have made Al-Quran easy for dhikr. Understanding, reciting, conveying. Allah made it easy. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Are there those who want to use it for dhikr, to remember themselves, to advise others, to practice, to understand? So Allah made the Quran easy. The messengers were sent with the bayan, not with the eloquent speech alone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it this unique word, لِيُبَيِّنَ, to explain clearly. What does that mean? They're still eloquent, so that the highest, most educated in their society can understand them. Eloquent in a way that the commoners can understand them. It's not only for one part of the society. Everybody has to understand the bayan. Some of them would understand the bayan with help from others who understand the language more than them, but everybody has to understand at least the foundation of Tawheed, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can accept them in His Jannah if they practice Tawheed and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and believe in their Prophet and their Messenger. So وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent any messenger, every messenger, with the lisan, the tongue of his people. لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. Now the bayan here doesn't mean only eloquent. Has two elements to them, very crucial. Ilm, knowledge in what they want to convey to their people. They have to have knowledge, not only good speech. And give them like 15, 20 pages from Shakespeare. What do I benefit from that for my akhirah? I don't benefit nothing. I don't benefit anything. And to have knowledge in what they're telling their people. So two parts to the bayan. It has to be based on knowledge, definitely. And there is no knowledge higher and better than the knowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave every Rasul He sent and every Nabi. And they have to have enough eloquent speech to impress the people. At the same time, they can understand what the messenger is saying to them. Our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam is no doubt the most eloquent Arab of all time. There is no way that anybody can surpass our Rasul in the eloquent speech he gave and the knowledge. Allahu Akbar, the knowledge that Allah sent to His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's just tremendous. So our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when you look at his ahadith, most of them can understand most of the words. How can he be so eloquent in his speech and yet people can understand his speech? He's not coming here to tell them, I studied Shakespeare, for example. If somebody today want to say, I am eloquent, you have to listen to me. I studied Shakespeare. Big deal. Nobody understands Shakespeare today. And Shakespeare didn't leave any lineage. His children died and he has no lineage. Even if he had lineage today and they're living in London, if you go through London like I did, when I used to study English literature there, I can barely understand what the people are saying. It is so far from English of today even that they call it the language of London. So being eloquent is just one part of this aspect. Knowledge is the foundation. Not being eloquent is the foundation. Knowledge is the foundation. So you have to have knowledge in the topic you're trying to preach to people, and then form it in the best way you can, but let the people understand what you're talking about, especially if it is about the religion. You want to talk about our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and about his seerah. Where is the knowledge? If the person himself who is propagating this book for a hardcore Sufi, like we need more Sufis today to learn about, if he said that he's not a alim, meaning in the seerah, in Islam, he's not a alim, but he is Shakespeare eloquent, a big deal. Where is the foundation? And it tells. You see, he said that his book has major problems, and he mentioned one of them. The story that some books of seerah in Arabic, I'm sorry to say, they have this story, that our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after he gave Zainab, his cousin, his paternal cousin, radiyallahu anha, in marriage to his, before Islam, adopted son, Zayd ibn Haritha, radiyallahu anh, he married her to him. Zayd was the freed slave of our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Zainab is the cousin of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam from the tribe of Quraysh. The marriage didn't work out that well. So they're saying that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam once came to see Zayd and saw the backside of Zainab and he loved her. So he wanted to marry her. And what garbage. This is garbage. This is not only a fake story. You'd be ashamed to say it about your sheikh in your masjid, that he saw a woman, he loved her, she's married. Why would he see her all of a sudden and marry her? Who gave her in marriage to Zayd? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was shocked. It's the first time he saw his cousin. I didn't know. Of course he knew. He's the one who gave her in marriage to Zayd and kept counseling them while they had problems in their marriage. It wasn't the first time he saw her, either going or coming back or coming. So it's not a shock, it's not a surprise. Why would he all of a sudden fall in love with her? That's garbage. Our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't go through this. Look at the ayah in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about Zayd. Zayd radiyallahu anhu, the only companion Allah mentioned by name in the Quran. He spoke about his marriage to Zainab in the Quran. فَلَمَّا قَضَى زَيْدٌ مِنْهَا وَطَرًا, when Zayd had no more interest in staying married to her, Zainab, زَوَّجْنَاكَهَا, we gave her to you in marriage. You see here the real story? This is why you should have a alim, not any alim in the Sunnah, who knows what kind of story to put in English for English speakers. Like they don't have enough negative views about our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam to spread it. And this book was like worldwide, acclaimed or whatever. No, I don't claim it for nothing, because this is a clear indication why this guy doesn't have knowledge. He's not a alim, shouldn't be writing about those topics. He wants to write about Shakespeare, go ahead, do it. But don't write about the seerah of our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and collect major problems in your book. And the book is in English, like the English speakers don't have enough negative things about our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so it's spread all over the world. A very famous book. I don't care. You're collecting their stories that are fake, fabrication, trash, contradict the Quran. Who gave Zainab, after Zayd divorced her, she finished her iddah, who gave Zainab to our Rasul for marriage? Is it his love for her all of a sudden? He saw her when he sees her. He's been seeing her. Or is it Allah who gave her to our Rasul in marriage? This is why Zainab used to say to the other wives of the companion of Rasulullah other wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your parents, your family gave you in marriage to Rasulullah. Allah gave me in marriage to him. So we don't need this book. I don't advise you to read it. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive this person, hardcore Sufi from the Shadili Tariqa. According to the man who was propagating this man and his book, he says he's a scholar. He's a alim. When they laughed, he said alim means a scholar in Shakespeare. Then he says this book has major stories that are major problems in themselves. Then he says, well, he wasn't a scholar, meaning he wasn't a alim. Or is he, or was he, or wasn't he? Come on, don't read this book and don't listen to this man. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the truth and make us among those who seek knowledge, ilm, knowledge, then try their best when they convey the knowledge to put it in the best way they can, to learn even literature so that they can give it to people who the most educated and the least educated can understand what they're saying. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.